What it Dooski, Teddy Brewski, what's the deal, Shaquille O'Neal, what's the word, motherfucking Larry Bird. Yo, it's your boy Reaction, man. You know, we back with another one. Listen, we gotta start changing these things up, man. It get crazy out here. We have to. So look, we gonna dabble. Don't worry about the LL Bean. That's something different. Before your time, but this is crazy right here. You know, so if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, man. You know, feel free to leave a fucking comment, like, all that. Please do. This here hit different. He's a 15-year-old hacker that hack shit by using his voice. It's diabolical. So listen, man, let me make sure I get the proper shout outs to what's boy channel? Damn. Visual Venture. You heard me? Make sure to go over to Visual Venture. All this shit is for entertainment and educational purposes only. So I don't own the content or nothing like that. That's my disclaimer. And that protects me from all the nonsense. With no further ado, it wasn't nothing. That's just crazy. But all right, yeah, let's get it started, man. Let's go.
The FBI. This is the story of how a blind kid became an FBI wanted hacker. I'm Visual Venture, and you are awesome. A dark past. Matthew Wegman didn't just dislike his childhood, he hated it. Matthew was born blind because of a condition called optic nerve atrophy. This happens when the optic nerve, which connects the eyes to the brain, gets damaged and can't send signals properly. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be a cure for this condition. For Matthew, this meant his eyes didn't function properly and likely never would. But as tough as that was, his blindness wasn't the only thing that made life hard. When Matthew was just 5, his father abandoned the family. His mom was left to hold him.
Yo, so not only was he blind, his pops dipsetted on him. So y'all keep that in your mental Rolodex.
Everything together, struggling to pay the bills with her job as a nurse. For Matthew, every day was a reminder of how unfair life was. But somehow, things got even worse as he got older. Matthew grew up in a tough neighborhood in East Boston, surrounded by kids who constantly picked on him. It didn't help that he walked around with a cane and his eyes always rolled around uncontrollably. Kids always teased Matthew.
So, you know what's crazy? Like, I had a homeboy that I grew up with, and his eyes did that. Like, they moved around. He was blind and shit. And, like, it was like them shit just kept moving all around. But he could see, though. His name was Solo. He was black. His name Solo. Shout out to Solo. I don't know if he's out in Arizona, but Solo used to be. He used to move his head, move his eyes, man. Let's get back to it.
But they had no idea that their mean jokes would eventually push Matthew into a life of crime. Bullying lit a fire in Matthew. He made up his mind to do two things. First, he wanted to live like his blindness didn't hold him back, to prove to himself and everyone else that he could do anything people with sight could. Second, he wanted to become so powerful that no one would ever dare to bully him again. It wasn't long before Matthew got the chance to tackle his first goal, living as though his blindness didn't matter. Although he couldn't see clearly, Matthew realized he could sense blurry shapes, and he exploited the ability for all it was worth. When he was 8, he learned how to ride a bike using the blurry shadows for guidance. Then he convinced his stepdad to let him drive a car around an empty parking lot. He even started cooking his own meals by feeling his way around the kitchen. Matthew said those things made him feel a lot better because he was doing something that people who see can do. Then Matthew shifted his focus to his second goal, to become so powerful that he would never be bullied again. But chasing that dream would lead him down a dark path and put him on the FBI's radar.
I was a teacher, and we don't get paid a lot. So I've always dreamed of starting my own business and leaving teaching.
Matthew had a superpower, and this isn't a figure of speech. Although Matthew couldn't see, he could hear much better than the average person.
The thing is, like, see, what people don't realize is, like, when you lose a sense, like if you blind, right, you either your sense of smell enhances or your hearing enhances to where you can, so the fact that you can't see, your hearing is like you're seeing. So this nigga was able, I seen this shit. This is, you know, I wanted to do this for y'all. I'm the reactions, man. The nigga ears could hear everything everybody's saying. Even like, it's just crazy. But listen.
If someone nearby was talking on the phone, Matthew could hear both sides of the conversation, like the phone was in his own hand. He could also remember any sound he heard and replicate it perfectly. This meant he could mimic voices so well that he could sound like an adult or even a female. By the age of 10, Matthew was pushing himself to see what he could do with his skills. He started by mimicking characters he heard on Cartoon Network and became obsessed with voices, music, and sounds of all sorts. Soon, he figured out that using the telephone was a great way to practice. This was around the year 2000 when most homes still used landline phones like these. As Matthew experimented with his home phone,
Hold up. So 2000. This gonna go over a lot of people's heads because they said the party line.
realized he could memorize phone numbers by the sounds of the buttons. Each number made a unique sound, and he memorized all of them. He dialed random numbers just to see who would pick up and how they would react. By the time he was 11, Matthew's ability to hear things far away, remember sounds, and mimic voices reached extraordinary.
By the time he was 11, let's not get that misconstrued. He's only 11 years old.
Levels. He knew the skill could give him the power he craved, and he was waiting for the perfect opportunity to use it. Then, in 2001, he got his chance. Around this time, Matthew was 11. He was, quote, a blind, little tubby, bald kid in a broke family, and because of that, he spent most of his time alone in his room. One day, a classmate who felt sorry for Matthew handed him a phone number. He told Matthew to call that number whenever he got lonely. It was a number for a telephone party line called Studio 55. Most people today don't know what a party line is.
If y'all don't know what the party line is, it's gonna go over your head. I'm gonna tell you my party line twist. Yo, what's going on? Wilmington, Delaware, light skinned boy, 5'6", 5'7". Get your whole description. That's what the party line was. Yo, listen, I ain't gonna hold you. If you never been on a party line, the fact that they said the party line is diabolical. You hear me? The party line was not, it was like pre-internet where you can chat. It was chat rooms. Then you can go one-on-one with the person. The person like you, but you never knew what was behind closed doors.
But back in the late 90s and early 2000s, party lines were insanely popular.
These people, like thousands of others throughout the country, have joined the party. The party line. It's one of the easiest and most enjoyable ways to meet new people.
Party lines were like phone versions of internet chat rooms. A bunch of people would call in and talk at the same time at like a conference call.
Just pick up the phone and call 1-809-5447.
I've never seen none of these commercials.
There's a party waiting for you. It's the party line. Talk with a new group of friends 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
The moment Matthew dialed into the party line, his loneliness disappeared. There were so many voices. Some were talking to each other. Others piped in only occasionally, listening in as they watched TV or played video games.
Would you stay on these party lines for hours and like people would come and go and it would be sort of like a chat room?
To most people, it would have been a chaotic mess of overlapping sounds. But Matthew could hear each voice and every detail, no matter how faint. This was the perfect place to deploy his superpower. Whenever he was on the phone, Matthew wasn't a shy blind kid from East Boston. He became someone completely different, outspoken, quick-witted, and even a little mean. Matthew spent hours on the party lines, chatting, switching between voices, and just having fun. But what he loved most was flirting with the girls on the line. In real life, talking to girls was hard for him, but on the phone, he had all the confidence in the world. Then, one bad encounter with a girl on the party line ruined everything. That girl made Matthew so mad that he committed his first crime, marking the start of his criminal journey. The question is, what happened to make him snap? A villain is born.
0 math skills needed. File your Fed and state returns free with TurboTax. Pay $0 to file. Roughly 37%.
The trouble started when Matthew was just 14, but then he spent 3 years and thousands of hours on the party lines, and his ego was massive. He thought he could say anything on there.
That man just said 3 years and thousands of hours on the party line. Listen, man. Hit the like button, man. That's diabolical. 3 years and thousands of hours. Reaction.
During one call, Matthew got into an argument with an 18-year-old girl named Danielle. Here's how it started. Matthew liked Danielle and wanted to flirt with her, but Danielle wasn't interested, not even a little bit. She shut him down right away. Danielle's rejection hit Matthew hard. First, he felt embarrassed, and then it turned into anger and eventually rage. He took it personally, seeing Danielle as one of the mean kids who bullied him when he was younger. He decided she needed to pay, and he already had a plan. Matthew's first step was to find Danielle's home phone number. Once he had it, he learned a skill called caller ID spoofing. Spoofing is a way to make a...
Alright, look, y'all. Caller ID spoofing. Now, he's going to break it down what that is. And it's basically where you can take the person's number and then jack the number and call it as yourself. But, well, you're calling as them, but you'll see.
Phone call look like it's coming from a different phone number. In this case, Matthew used spoofing so that when he called someone, it would show Danielle's number on the caller ID screen of the person he phoned, as if the call was coming from Danielle's phone when it was actually coming from his. Technically, spoofing is illegal, but it was nothing compared to what Matthew was going to do next. With everything set, Matthew called 911 and rigged the caller ID so it looked like the call was coming from Danielle's house. When the operator answered, Matthew disguised his voice. He tried to sound like an unstable, angry old man. Matthew said his name was John DeFano. He claimed he was inside Danielle's house holding her and her father hostage. He went on to make multiple...
Hold on. He's about 13 or 11 or 12 years old. It's called swatting, where he finessed it to the bit that John didn't like him, because I'm trying to stop cussing on here. Y'all trying to do better. So the girl didn't like him, dissed him on the party line. So he spoofs her. And then sends the SWAT, F.B.I, saying that they hold somebody hostage in the crib at gunpoint, which is all cap. And then, and this is 60 things.
Threats and ended by challenging the police. He screamed, "I'm not talking anymore. You have the address. If I don't have help here now in the next 5 minutes, I swear I will blank these people." Then he hung up. SWAT officers stormed Danielle's house preparing for the worst. Inside, Danielle and her dad were just going about their day, completely unaware of what was coming. Suddenly, the SWAT team burst in, weapons drawn, shouting commands as they searched for a supposed threat. The whole scene was pure chaos. Luckily, no one got hurt. It was a traumatic experience for the family. What Matthew did was called swatting. Swatting is a cruel prank where someone tricks the police into sending a SWAT team to an innocent person's home. And it's as dangerous...
That swatting is crazy.
Dangerous as it sounds. In Tennessee, a man lost his life because of a swatting incident gone horribly wrong. Of course, swatting is a serious crime, and many people have been sent to prison for doing it. In one case, a man got 20 years behind bars. Back at Danielle's house, she and her dad were still in shock. Meanwhile, blind Matthew was in his room feeling unstoppable. He saw swatting as a way to get revenge on anyone who crossed him. All it took was one call to 911 and a little voice acting, and he could cause chaos without ever leaving his room. Unfortunately, Danielle...
Mind you, he can... Listen, y'all, my fault. But mind you, he can mimic any voice he hears. He can replicate it. Cartoons, people, men, women, whatever, it don't matter. The nigga ears so crazy because he's blind and he got a superpower. You know what a superpower is?
Wasn't the only name on Matthew's hit list. He was just getting started.
Hey there, you won't believe what we've got in store for you today. Introducing the SIG P365.
Matthew spent hours each day on party lines, trash-talking and picking fights. When someone on the line would challenge him or piss him off, he would respond by faking a 911 call and sending an armed SWAT team to their door. Matthew swatted his enemies as many as 60 different times. The more time he spent on party lines, the more extreme he became. Before Matthew turned 15, he discovered a new skill to help him cause more chaos. It was called freaking.
Phone freaking was learning how to use a technology, how to penetrate and utilize and expand the technology in ways that weren't generally available to the general public.
Freaks are hackers, except they don't hack computers, they hack telephones. Freaking started as a way to save money on calls.
Freaks use technical expertise and guile to make free phone calls.
But eventually, these phone hackers, or freaks, started doing much more damage. They would reroute numbers so calls go to the wrong place, eavesdrop on private calls, and even shut down someone's phone service completely.
Freaks are criminals, fraudsters, freeloaders. They're engaged in a war against the giant international phone companies.
To put it simply, freaks can cause a surprising amount of harm with a phone. One freak went as far as hacking the voicemail of the Department of Homeland Security. Of course, freaking is illegal and considered a cybercrime. But Matthew didn't care. Freaking made him more powerful, so he decided to become a master at it. As part of his training, Matthew studied the telephone system obsessively. Every tone, click.
Yo, listen, hold up, y'all. Remo's Reactions TV. This is diabolical. This what stood out to me when I watched this shit, because I seen it before, but I didn't react to it. So I'm not going to front like it's a fresh reaction. But this part is what destroyed me. How the fuck can you memorize the... Yo, hold on. Come on, man.
And beep became second nature to him. It didn't care. Freaking made him more powerful, so he decided to become a master at it. As part of his training, Matthew studied the telephone system obsessively. Every tone, click, and beep became second nature to him. Soon, if he heard someone dialing a number, he could memorize the digits purely by tone. But he didn't stop there. Matthew pushed his skills even further by mastering social engineering. Social engineering is basically manipulating people into giving away private information like passwords and access codes. It's like being a con artist, but over the phone.
But hackers can be very socially smart. They can call up a company and convince the company to give them details they normally wouldn't do.
Matthew would call companies like AT&T and Verizon pretending to be an employee and trick them into giving up sensitive information. If he heard a supervisor's voice once, he could imitate it flawlessly to trick other employees into doing what he wanted. As Matthew got better at freaking, he found more creative ways to break the law. He would wiretap Sprint customers to listen in on credit card transactions. Once he obtained the numbers, he would buy things using the victim's credit card. When he didn't have access to a real card, he could somehow bill purchases to bogus credit cards, snagging everything from free phone service to Dunkin' Donuts gift cards. He even hacked and called the cell phones of Lindsay Lohan and Eminem. This guy was a hacking genius. Cards snagging everything from free phone service to Dunkin' Donuts gift cards. He even hacked and called the cell phones of Lindsay Lohan and Eminem. This guy was a hacking genius. As Matthew's skills grew sharper, his patience wore thinner. The smallest hint of disrespect could set him off in an instant. People on the party lines quickly learned to tread carefully around him. One person even said that he was feared by grown men and women because he was ruthless. Another described him as crazy enough to do anything. By 2005, Matthew achieved his goal. He was considered one of the best phone hackers among phone party line groups. And as a twisted reward for his efforts, he was invited to join a notorious gang of phone hackers known as the Wrecking Crew. Together, they would take his talents and his destruction to the next level. The Wrecking Crew. Alright, so we know how destructive Matthew was with a phone, but what's even scarier is what hackers can do with a computer. Every time we go online, we leave digital footprints, traces of our personal information. And in today's world, this can be especially dangerous, which is why Proton exists. Proton is an encrypted software platform built around one goal: protecting your privacy. They offer tools like Proton Mail, which gives you a secure email address that's protected with end-to-end encryption.
Using computers, they conjure up fake account numbers and credit card numbers, or acquire the numbers using dubious methods.
But for Matthew Wegman, joining this gang of phone hackers was like finding a family. He wasn't just a kid alone in his room anymore. He was part of a team that admired his skills and gave him a taste of real power. At the center of it all was Stuart Rosoff, Matthew's mentor in crime. Stuart was a ruthless middle-aged man who already spent 3 years in prison. Stuart didn't care care about silly pranks. He did things that could ruin lives. For instance, Stewart called 911 on a woman who annoyed him. He told the dispatcher she was hurting her kids. That was all it took. Within minutes, the police were at her door ready to take her children away. But Stewart didn't stop there. When Child Protective Services started investigating the woman, Stewart called her to gloat, bragging that he could destroy her life anytime he wanted to. Stewart taught Matthew that true power came from being heartless. And Matthew, who was just 15 years old, believed him. Matthew adopted the nickname Lil Hacker, and with his incredible hearing and knack for impersonation, he quickly became the most skilled member of the wrecking crew. But while Matthew was making a name for himself, someone else was watching him closely. On the party lines, a 37-year-old man named Jeff Daniels wanted to get close to Matthew. Jeff Daniels was arrested for hacking as a teenager.
Now, y'all, listen. Y'all got to listen to this part, because now it's like hacker versus hacker. Yeah, it's hacker versus hacker. Cause he over here destroying shit, he going crazy. Fam about the hold up.
Teenager, but he turned his life around. He saw Matthew as a younger version of himself, and he didn't want Matthew to make the same mistakes he did. Daniels made it his mission to pull Matthew out of the hacking gang before it was too late. But Matthew wasn't having it. He didn't like Jeff Daniels giving him advice or sticking his nose where it didn't belong. The two clashed, and when Daniel didn't back off, Matthew decided to scare him off. Matthew tracked down where Daniels lived. Then he found the phone number of Daniels' landlord. With a single phone call, Matthew tried to ruin Daniels' life. Matthew called the landlord and told him that Daniels was a pervert and a murderer, trying to get him evicted. But when the landlord told Daniels about the shocking claims, Daniel instantly knew who was behind it, Matthew. But instead of retaliating in anger, Daniels did something that finally got through to Matthew. Daniels tracked down the teenager's detailed personal information, including his social security number. It was a warning, a way of saying, I'm smarter than you. I can beat you at your own game. And it worked. Matthew was impressed by Daniel's skills. For the first time ever, Matthew started to listen. The two began talking for hours on the phone at night. One night, something broke inside Matthew. He opened up about his miserable and impoverished life, crying as he told Daniels how much he longed to see the world with his own eyes. Daniel encouraged him to leave his life of crime behind because breaking the law wasn't going to make things better. Matthew took his advice to heart. He changed his party line nickname from Lil Hacker to Silence, a symbol of his attempt to turn things around. He even met a girl named Chastity on a party line, and they began a long-distance relationship. For the first time in a long time, it seemed like Matthew was on the right path, but the pull of his old life was too strong.
Here is how to be a video gamer forever in less than 60 seconds. Now hear me out. If you're anything like me, then you...
He missed the power he once had and the way people feared him because of his ruthlessness. Most importantly, he loved being part of the Wrecking Crew gang. Matthew was torn between two lives. Then, one incident on the party line unraveled all the progress Matthew made. At just 16, Matthew got into an argument with a 28-year-old girl named Stephanie Prue. He lashed out and told her, "You're annoying. I might come after you." But instead of begging for mercy, Stephanie brushed him off like he was nothing, daring him to take action. Her defiance set something off in Matthew. He wanted to prove to Stephanie and everyone else that he wasn't someone to mess with. The wrong target. After arguing with Matthew on the party line, Stephanie Prue went back to her normal life, but she never forgot his threat to come after her. Days turned into weeks and nothing happened. Eventually, Stephanie started to think it was all talk, that Matthew was just bluffing. She was wrong. Matthew wasn't bluffing, he was waiting. For his plan to work, it needed to be a surprise. Eventually, Matthew made his move, but instead of targeting Stephanie, he went after her 60-year-old father. It was 1 a.m. on June 12, 2006. Matthew sat in his bedroom and called 911. Using caller ID spoofing, he made it look like the call was coming from a house in Alvarado, Texas. When the operator answered, Matthew changed his voice to sound like an angry old man. He identified himself as Jim Prue, Stephanie's dad, and said he was high on substances. Then came the real bombshell. bombshell. He claimed he was armed and was holding someone hostage in his trailer. He demanded $50,000 so he could flee to Mexico, but he also warned that if any cops got in his way, he would retaliate. Then Matthew ended the call, leaving the operator no choice but to send a SWAT team once again to the scene. With one call, he turned Stephanie's father into a marked man. At that very moment, Jim Prue was at home in his trailer, completely unaware of the storm heading his way. Stepping outside to grab something, he spotted shadows moving toward him. Before he could react, he was surrounded by SWAT officers with weapons aimed at him. The officers threw Prue on the ground, snapped handcuffs on him, and put him in the back of a squad car. One wrong move, and the situation could have ended in tragedy. Once the SWAT team searched the trailer, they found no hostages, no weapons, and no danger. When Stephanie heard what happened to her dad, she knew Matthew was behind it. She figured this swatting incident was the end of Matthew.
Listen, all right. Now we get the picture. I mean, he's gonna go on stories about more swatting and shit like that, and it's just crazy, man. Cause I've never even thought about that. I've never even heard of anything like this. And the fact that this youngin was 14, 15 years old, blind, and doing all this shit, and then like it's just crazy. But shout out to Broski, man. Like, you know, go to his channel and all that. What's his name again? Damn, man. Disrespect, cuz I don't want to do that. Visual Venture. Go to this channel, but we get the picture now. Like, you know, hit that like, subscribe. Remother Reaction TV, man. We back with another one. We're gonna keep doing it. We're gonna get better. You know what I mean? Bill Cosby sweater. Get better Bill Cosby sweater. No jail time though. None of that fuck shit. We out, man. Hit that like and sub.